The views and opinions expressed in these historical letters that may contain vernacular used in the World War II era, the post-war era, and the Cold War era do not reflect the views and opinions of any of the individuals involved with this project, including, but not limited to, the podcast's creators. Good morning, Jamie. How are you this morning?
Lovely.
You have
Lovely.
your coffee?
Got the coffee. Gotta make sure we have the coffee.
Yep, always need coffee. Speaking of coffee, we're going to have some coffee-related content coming up soon on the channel.
Oh.
So we'll hear a little bit about what was going on with coffee in the 40s and during World War II, but we'll get into that a little later in the episode. First of all, thank you to all of our subscribers, all the people following along, watching the videos on YouTube. Please like, share, and subscribe to the Love Sweetie Podcast. Please go on www.lovesweetiepodcast.com for more updates for the story. Today, we have 3 letters to review for episode 22 here. 2 of them are going to be from Sweetie, and then the grand finale is going to come in from Chester Demaree himself, writing from Lacona to his son Frank.
Yeah.
A good doctor is going to give us an update on what's going on back in Lacona, and it is a superior letter about his life and what he's focused on over in Iowa as he's writing to his son. So I think this is the type of episode, Jamie, we just dive into that first letter.
Oh, yes.
April 12th, 1944. Dear Jeanne, thank you for the nice little Easter card. Lou scolded me for not having sent any out, especially since he had reminded me in plenty of time. I seem to be dormant and almost oblivious to passing time. Sometimes I wake up with a jolt when I discover how quickly the days have passed. It started raining Saturday evening sometime, Sunday a.m. It was pouring when Lou left for work. Come to think of it, I wrote and told you that, and about our going to the show in the afternoon. We were going to go to the dance Monday night, the Easter ball with Jeanne Garter. But the OPA has forbidden any pleasure driving in taxis. Going to a dance or nightclub is termed pleasure driving, and it would have been impossible to go by cab. It was still pouring, and I'd have had to clean the stripes on Lou's dress jumper and press my blue dress, so we just didn't go. It rained yesterday, too, and we waded mud and water and got wet, and hair drooped all day yesterday. Only this morning, for the first time in 4 days, has the sun come out. The rainy days have left me with a blue mood, and lack of mail and contact with home has not done a thing towards boosting my morale. Our mail has fallen off to nothing, in spite of my killing myself off getting letters written. Okay, so,
sweetie.
It's a rainy start to the spring of 1944.
Yes. And this is just 2 days after the letter that we had in episode 21.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just a little bit, so this is right into it. And it is definitely a different tone than that letter.
Yes, different tone. Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I'm sure the weather had a part to play in that.
The weather had a huge part to play in this, and we're not going to get into it in this episode, but it rained for 4 days straight. And I think everybody gets the sense that when it rains and rain stays over an area for 4 days, that's going to cause some problems. So in episode 23, we're going to talk about really what was going on weather-wise in the Midwest at the time. This is quite a significant rainfall that hit the area. So for her, it's just kind of messing up plans a little bit, nothing more. In other areas, it's going to be a bit more devastating, the level of rainfall that they're getting here. But we know it's Easter, so it's a rainy Easter. And then she mentions this line here, the OPA has forbidden any pleasure driving in taxis. And we have to ask ourselves the question, what is the OPA? And what are they doing forbidding taxis, to get to things for pleasure, in this case, a dance? So the OPA was the Office of Price Administration. And the Office of Price Administration was a federal government entity that was formed. I think it ended in 1947, but this is the board governing the entire price ceiling and rationing system across the country during the war. And I was doing some research on the Office of Price Administration because, quite honestly, we think about rations, and I think a lot of people think about it the same way I do. Like, we get the concept.
Mhm.
You pay for the item, you can only buy so much. But there has to be some sort of logistical train that's going with this. Because in the previous episode, we were looking at that brochure from Ottumwa, and it said, here's how many ration books have been issued by the city. So, and by the county in Wapello County. So we're looking at this and saying, someone's maintaining that system. But I mean, it's the federal government. For this to work, you really have to have everything in order, from the federal government to the state government, clearly to the municipal government. You know, we just saw about the ration books in that brochure. How does that system really operate? How do you really keep track that someone hasn't bought more, I don't know, coffee than they're supposed to have bought? And when I went looking for this information, there's millions of documents out there about how this works, but very little written on it, because this is about operations. How do you logistically enforce that people can only buy so much? How do you walk into one store for coffee and they're like, oh, you already bought more coffee than you're supposed to, so we can't, you know.
Yeah, during a time when they didn't have the immediate communication that we have now, where you could just, yeah, like this is a time and when things were, so they had to be documented. And so the Office of the Price Administration, this was created for
Yeah,
a specific purpose.
that's what it would seem.
And then, so not only was something developed, but it had to be developed very quickly
And on a very large scale. And then if you go in one shop, okay, so that merchant knew you already, exceeded your amount of coffee that you buy. All right, so you go to the next merchant. Somebody else has coffee. I can go buy it over here. Nope. That's not how this system is going to work. And I've been studying this, looking into this. I got some documents from the retailer's perspective. I found online, in my little searching for things online, some documentation from retailers in Iowa in 1942, 43, 44, exactly about how the Office of Price Administration worked. So I have some documentation. I picked it up. It has everything about the equations that they use to figure out price ceilings, the system, how you check to make sure that they're using the right stamp. We remember from episode 20, there were the gas ration stamps, right? You could only get so much gas, had to borrow some. Amazing logistical train, amazing operational system from the federal to the state to the local government, all working in harmony, because the whole thing, the effort here was, it's for the war. This is the part that everyone's going to do in the war effort itself. So yeah, definitely something that we're looking into more. This little line that she gives, the OPA has forbidden any pleasure driving in taxis, leads to a lot of questions. And yes, Jamie, they're going to ration coffee. Just that thought. The thought of only so much coffee.
I don't know what I would have done.
Nope. Revolution. Done. Not making it. Nope. Sure sign of addiction. Okay. So.
Yes. It's a problem. Yeah. But yeah, it's one I don't mind having.
They're going to ration everything. So we're working on some bonus content with regards to this. So the rain, there's a bigger story there. We'll get into that in the next episode. But yeah. And it's sort of going to bring down the tone of the letter a little bit. Tonight, Louis S. has night flying, and he will not get home before 1 or 1:30, if he gets home then. However, tomorrow is his first day of his 48, Thursday and Friday, and I have to work, of course. While he does nothing, and that irks me no end. Friday night is the last night of his 48, and I'm going then to get my hair cut. Tonight, I iron. I've had at least 2 run-ins with Lou within a week, one pretty bad, and the other just minor. They've left me with a feeling of something lacking or something to be desired. Could be my imagination, I suppose. Can we just mention here, she's writing this letter, tonight, Louis S. has night flying. What other Louis are we talking about anyway?
I think she's mad at him. I would, when I'm reading this letter, I think that she does say, she says she's had 2 run-ins with Lou. And also the weather's kind of yucky, and that just doesn't anything.
Yeah, the whole environment.
So they had fights.
Yeah, and it's interesting how they how we tend to use a person's full name when we're upset with them. Louis S. is doing this. There's no other Louis in the storyline, so when you just use the term Lou. Uh-oh.
She's mad.
She's mad.
They had some and that yeah. So and that's coming through the letters.
Lou's family called us last night, long distance. I guess they were just lonesome for him. His family is all right, but his Uncle Lane got sick and was taken to the hospital, where they found he had cancer of the lung. He had been sick before, and I guess he just hadn't properly recovered. He caught cold, and I guess they thought it was pneumonia, until they got him to the hospital. Lewis said that he didn't see how Uncle Lane could live through another sickness, and when he found out the call was long distance, he thought they might be calling to say he had died. Well, I wrote to them this AM, and to Sister, to Arlene Bamberg. She's sick again with that same ailment she had here. They've been unable to identify it, and to you. I've been trying to think up clever little things to send her. I've not done too well to begin with, but I'm running out of ideas. Can you suggest anything that might amuse her? I'd appreciate anything you can think of.
Yeah, and this is also adding to the tension in the air, for sure, if a family member's sick.
Yeah, and they had just seen his Uncle Lane when they went out there.
Yep.
If you listen to episode 20, you can see it, like they had spent an evening with them. So I can imagine this is probably also something that's taking a toll on Lou.
Yeah.
It is time I went to the biffy to comb my hair and touch up my shiny nose to go to lunch for my daily bowl of soup. Do not mention a scrap between us 2 Grams. I guess we can work it out by ourselves. However, I feel since you helped launch us, you are partly responsible, and I certainly should be able to unload on somebody. Do right. That would do us both good. Love, Sweetie, and Lou.
She's mad at him, but she still signs his name on the letter.
Yeah, it's a small matter. But then
it happens.
This humor with Jeanne, you are partly responsible for this. So you are part of the solution.
She's like, Jeanne, you are the other. Jeanne is like the third member.
Yeah. It's kind of, I loved when I grew up, I watched Boy Meets World. Right? And you always have like Corey, Sean, and Topanga. And obviously, spoiler alert, Corey and Topanga are obviously together, but Sean is always there. And this is like that sort of unit. It's the same thing with the show Psych. I love the show Psych on USA. I don't know if you ever watched Psych. I know not everybody watched that show. It's just a really nice show, and I think it has done well on streaming after it ended. But it's that same thing where you have like 2 main characters in a relationship, and there's that third person there. And it's just a really fun and happy relationship. And I see that in both of those shows. And that's very similar. I think people can kind of relate to that, in that Sweetie and Lou are together, but Jeanne is an important part of their life. So
Jeanne, and both of them.
Yeah. And both
this
of them.
Isn't just Sweetie and Jeanne. It's like Sweetie, Jeanne, and Lou. Like he also loves Jeanne.
Yeah.
Yes, but so it's sad that after such a lovely letter in our last episode and how they were getting along so well, that things aren't going as well. But
I think there's the pressures, the weather, the stress going on, the news from Pennsylvania that Uncle Lane's not doing well. Yeah, it's going to add some tension.
Ottumwa, Iowa, April 17th, 1944. Dear Jeanne, the mail situation picked up for at least a day or 2. One day we got a letter from you and a bond from Great Lakes. Then we got a letter from Mom, Lou's mother, and one from Arlene. Yesterday, we got a short note from Elizabeth, 2 cards from Sister, and 1 from you. Thanks for your suggestion. I wish I'd known about it sooner, but the letter from Arlene said she was able to work now. I'd exhausted my resources, and your suggestion would indeed have been a welcome one.
And I think we have to recognize here, oh my gosh, Elizabeth sent something.
Yeah, because she was supposed to be sending those pictures.
Right. Yeah. Well, that was Margaret, though. So we've got Sister and Elizabeth. So Elizabeth
Betty. The 2 Elizabeth things.
There's 2 Elizabeths. Yeah. Margaret, Elizabeth.
So Elizabeth. Oh, so Lou.
Elizabeth. She who did not send something, if you watch the bonus episode about the wedding album, she who seemingly did not send anything for the wedding has sent a note.
It's a short note.
It's a short note, but hey, progress. So.
This was probably a tremendous effort for her.
Yeah.
And then she had 2 cards from Sister. Other
2 cards
Elizabeth.
from Sister. Yep. So, hey, there's a bunch of mail. Yeah.
You say you're off your case, but you didn't say why. Is your patient better? Or is she now out of this world? I hope you and Marion have a nice time at Des Moines this weekend. Be sure you remember to tell us when you come Saturday. Lou has standby or something Saturday night, but he'll be home Sunday. Oh, hell, you'll have to stay till Monday if you see him, 'cause he won't be home till 7:30 Sunday night. But that's okay. I'll see that much more of you, and goodness knows that's not much. I'm returning Bob's letter to you. I'm taking his address and to write to him as often as I can. You haven't heard from him since the day he was here with Mom, Florence, and KM. I'm sure sorry, too, for Lou liked him so much and so quickly that he was pretty disappointed. No film, I'm afraid.
So it seems like Jeanne's going to visit Ottumwa, that she's planning some sort of weekend, and if Sweetie gets her way, extended weekend travel here to catch up. And it's just, again, part of that big relationship. She's so excited for her sister to potentially visit.
We came out here to a big station dance last night. It was a lot of fun. I'll tell you about it when you come, for if I'm to get this in the mail, I've got to stop. Write what bus you're coming on. Why don't you come on Friday? Lou will be home then. He'll be on the base Saturday, and we can visit. And then he'll be home Sunday night. You can see him then. And then if you have to, you can go home Monday. Though you could easily enough wait till Tuesday so you could see him Monday night. Come Friday, and we'll argue later about when you should go back. Love, Sweetie, and Lou.
She really, really, really wants Jeanne to come visit.
Yep, she wants to see her sister. Sisterly love. Yep. Mm-hmm. Definitely the trio. Trio's trying to get back together.
Well, that's lovely. And it seems like it's been a little bit of time, so maybe, her and Lou have calmed down a little bit.
Yeah, they were at a dance.
A rough patch, yeah.
Whatever the rough patch was, it seems to have moved on. We don't get an update on Uncle Lane at this time, but maybe we'll find out later what happened there. But we're going to leave Ottumwa for a little bit here, and we're going to go back to Lacona, because Dr. Demaree has been writing to his sons, to Frank and to Bob. So we have this letter today from Chester to Frank. At the beginning of the next episode, we're going to have a letter from Chester to Bob. So we've got 2 episodes here today and the next episode, in which, if you've been looking for an update from Dr. Demaree, never fear, Chester is here.
Lieutenant Frank E. Demaree, SC Signal Section, 7th FC, care of Postmaster, APO, San Francisco, California. April 19th, 1944, Lacona, Iowa. Dear Francois, we have not received any word from you or Bob this week, and I will write you both in this combination letter. We have been having cold, rainy weather since the 1st of April, and besides its being disagreeable, the Agricolae are behind with their seeding oats, and they have not had a chance to get the soil ready for corn. We have burned a lot of coal this winter and are still burning it. So I'll finish it up at the house this week, but I have undoubtedly enough here at the office to carry us until the advent of summer. Long live summer. We have really been not so busy lately, partly on account of people not getting around in the mud, and partly on account of the increasing activities among the Agricolae.
He loves this term, Agricolae.
I love this term, Agricolae.
The farmers, yeah.
I'll say it again.
Agricolae, yeah.
When I read it, I was like, I have a feeling this is referring to the agricultural community, the farmers.
Yep, the farmers. Yep.
But I couldn't figure out how to pronounce it, so...
Yeah, it's not used commonplace except for Chester. I mean, but of course he's calling his son Francois.
He's calling him Francois.
Yeah.
And we're seeing 2 here. This is on the 19th of April in Iowa, and he's also referencing the horrible weather they've been having.
Yeah, that there's a lot of cold, there's a lot of rain. So it's been tough.
Agricolae.
Agricolae. Yep.
I think that I will go to the Iowa State Medical Convention at Des Moines this coming week. We may stay over with Bill. M.A. has the mumps, and Jabil received the deferment until 12th of October. It may be possible that he will not go at all. We may stay all night with them, and I may attend the convention more than just one day. It has been a few days since I went to one, and I might as well get some proper time on it. The preacher has been having some trouble holding his congregation's interest. He was in my office a short time ago talking about it. I suggested that he leave off preaching philosophical sermons and try preaching bread and butter sermons, trying out some applied religion information. Mom and I went to church last Sunday to see if he would use my advice. He did, and one of the men that he directed some of his shafts at said that he should preach more like them. I believe it is an interesting experiment that I'm trying. You would not think that I could extend my influence into the church, would you? I'm going to give him something of an outline of about 12 sermons and see what I can accomplish.
Chester's in the church now.
Chester is now somehow outlining the sermons for the preacher.
I just love how he's like, and please don't break your arm patting yourself on the back, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's like, and he took my advice, and it was well received.
He didn't just say, maybe I'll write a few more, we'll have some coffee or tea, or his Pepsi Cola with his catheter straw. Who knows what's going on with that? He's writing 12 outlines.
Oh, he's gonna sit down for a while, and
yeah. Laura, she's still waiting for the chairs to be built. He's gonna write. He's now in charge. Chester's in charge now of the people in Lacona, Iowa, of the Presbyterian sermon listening.
Huh.
Oh, Chester. Here we go.
Oh, Chester.
Frank, I've been thinking that it would be a good thing if you would join the Masonic Order. It would be quite an experience if you would do it at Honolulu, if you're there. Look the matter up. You have resided there for at least 6 months, and I think that you would be eligible. I think that there is a chance that you would be given the work better there than you would get it here in the U.S. It would cost you about $50 here in the U.S. I would think you would not have to pay more for the initiation there. You should receive at least 3 degrees there for that initiation charge. At least try and look the matter up anyway if you have the time. It would be okay if you could look this matter up with some minister who could direct you to the proper location to make your investigation. I would like to have you do this. Be sure and let me know how you come out with this. Be sure and let me know about your reaction to the matter. I think that it would be a worthwhile experience for you.
I would like to let you know my reaction to the matter.
Yeah.
Because, good Lord, he's certainly driving this point home, isn't he?
Frank, you're going to join the Masons, and I'm telling you that you should.
You should join the Masons. Go look it up.
Mm-hmm.
Let me know how it goes. You should do this.
Yeah.
I'm like, and okay, and I think we've mentioned this before, that we're both libertarians, both libertarian women.
Yep.
And one thing I've noticed most about libertarian women is they don't like being told what to do.
Right.
So when I read this, I'm just like, I would be like, no, just to spite you.
Yep.
Rebellion. I think it's so hard. But I think it's this is Chester's way.
And if you think about the Masonic order, and you think about that pursuit of truth and knowledge that the Freemasons are always, it's always knowledge. Who better? This is the first time he mentions it. So it's clear Chester's already Mason at this point. And you've got a doctor who is experimental, who works with carpentry, right? There's a huge legacy there with the Masons. The builder, the crafter. Now he's involving himself with religion and writing sermons. He's a Mason. So this makes sense. I asked my dad. Chester is buried at the Masonic Cemetery in Des Moines. So he's buried as a Mason. And I asked my dad, how far did Chester go with the Masons? Because they have all these degrees. And I was looking it up. I think now people can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong here. There's different, levels of Masonry. But really, if you go into the higher number of degrees, there's really 32 degrees. And then the 33rd is, I think, something like supreme. It's just kind of like the absolute leadership from what I understand. So I asked my dad, I'm like, what degree Mason was Chester? And he just responded back, 32. So Chester, I was looking to see if we could find the documentation on this, and I'll have to reach out to his old lodge because this is going back a while and I don't see the information going back into the 50s and 60s. But I believe that would classify him as a master mason. And when you look at like what he's writing about and what he's doing, and he's like the PhD doctor in town, and we're going to get into some other parts of this letter, it's really no surprise. So him asking his son to join the Masons, this is an individual that is very much a Mason at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that people would find that interesting to think, like, what degree of Mason is Chester? From what my father told me, 32nd degree. So pretty much as high as you get.
Last Sunday we went out into the woods. We went to a different part of the wild than we did before. Here I found thousands of rue anemone, an early spring flower. Here we also found a lot of large elders with great thick stems that would make very fine pop guns like I used to use when I was a kid. Here we also found several crested titmouse who were easily called to us and who fluttered their wings and began answering our call and acted as they would like to have a fight with us, providing we were the likes of their kind. The bird books state that they come to you on account of their unbounded curiosity, but I think they come with a competitive and combative spirit. They not only scold, peck their perching gland, but also scold and act in an intolerant manner. I would state anything but in an attitude of curiosity or tolerance.
And this too, I told Allison, the tufted, and I believe that this is probably the same as a tufted titmouse. It's probably just another word for it. But the tufted titmouse is my favorite bird. It's my favorite bird. And so to hear him talk about this and like to talk about their aggressive, to talk about their mannerisms and stuff, it's so funny.
Yeah, and then we go back to like sort of that idea of the Mason, in the previous little passage, the idea of the naturalist, right? So we have a doctor, photography, carpentry, philosophy, religion, writing the sermons at this point, writing the outlines of the sermons, and then the naturalist, walking through the woods, observing things. He's in a pursuit of truth his entirety of his life, for sure.
Today we sent Maida your coat of arms that I have worked upon for some time, in which I was unable to send you earlier on account of the paint drying earlier. I suppose that you do not want it. However, I think that it would be something that you could take with you so that you could hang it on your wall, as in hoc signo vinces, in this sign I conquer. You will remember that such a sign was taken along with our forebears to the Crusades some 1,000 years ago nearly. However, we will allow you and Maida to thrash that out among yourselves.
Let's talk about this. This is interesting, and I still have it here with me. He's clearly making these crests for the family members. So I would imagine the one that was sent is very similar to the one that he gave to Lou and Sweetie, and this is the one that he gave to Lou and Sweetie on their wedding. Maida and Frank have gotten married very recently in the storyline as well, so he's in a production line of these crests. We don't know if he made one for Bob and for Florence, unclear, but he's bringing up the old heraldry. And again, going back to the Masons, of course he is, right? Yes. Of course he's saying, well, this is, what was taken along on the Crusades. So he studied the history. He's gone through this. The Demaree line is coming from the Demarest line. And I've done some research into this. There's really two variants. They came over to the United States into New Jersey and landed in the 1600s because they were leaving Europe because they were French Huguenots. So French Huguenots were persecuted. The Huguenots were persecuted and they left Europe in about that time period. There was a lot of religious persecution, 1500s, 1600s, things like that. But he's going even further back and he's saying, here's the Crusades. And there's a bit of storylines that go on into the direct translation of Demarest. There's two variants, really. There's Demarest, Demarest, and there's Demarets, Demarets. So it just changes the S and the T position at the end. When we're going back into those historic lines, I was looking at the name meaning, and I believe that the Mares, because we think about the French Huguenots, It means of the marshes. The maras is the marsh. So it's interesting that there's the scallop shells, right? Because they grow in the marshes. I love that sort of symbolism that we have there. But there's also an even older Arthurian relationship. So if you know your King Arthur, and the Round Table references, that Hector Demaree, I believe he was one of the knights of the Round Table. The thing is, he sides with Lancelot. So he's not on Arthur's side of the storyline. And there's some other interesting information. But the family line is quite old. So when he said this about the Crusades, and I was reading this portion of the letter, I find it interesting because I know there's also this whole Arthurian legend and lore. And you just imagine Chester knows all this.
Yes.
No way he didn't look into it. And it's interesting. I have it right here, actually. I think, yes. I actually hadn't thought I was going to bring this one up in this episode, but I was going through in the attic, boxes and boxes, showed the ring. In one of the boxes that Sweetie had tucked away, as well as another gold cameo, was a gold necklace. This is the Huguenot cross. And you can see the cross with the dove. And Sweetie would wear this because they're descended from the Huguenots. When I was down in Charleston, South Carolina, they actually have a Huguenot church. It's very beautiful to look at. But Chester is bringing into the family all of this knowledge of the family order. And so, of course, the weddings, he's making the coat of arms. So I thought it's just very interesting to talk about the fact that, here's this whole story about Masons, naturalists, histories, writing sermons, and the Crusades. So, yeah.
I have about finished that picture that I have been painting for Lizzie. I think that I have made fairly good result of this picture, but it is harder than I first thought it would be. I think that I have made some progress, and I think that I will keep trying to make one of these each month if I can. I wish that I had more time to devote effort to it, but I think that I have a good opportunity to do something anyway, and so I'm going to get after the matter anyway. We have not received the books that you stated would be sent us. Your Bird Lore of Hawaii. I think that we will add some more bird and insect books to our collection. I have started a good nucleus of a library. I think that I will try to send you a good book for you to ponder over while you are at work. We received the Bell telephone news yesterday. It seems to be about the same as it was when you were here and read it. I must tell you, while I think of it, there are several boys from around here at the same place as you are. Look some of them up for us. Love, Papa.
Mm-hmm.
Love Papa.
Yeah.
He's a painter, too.
He is a painter, yeah. So he's doing that. And then we get the reference, we were talking earlier about it, Jamie, the Bell Telephone Company.
Yeah.
So coming from Alexander Graham Bell, that Bell, And eventually, there's a huge history, I don't think we can get into in this episode, about the Bell Telephone Company. And it still basically does survive to this day, right? Because we have Bell Telephone and the evolution with the American Telephone and Telegraph Company, commonly referred to as AT&T. So there's some sort of circular going on here with the telephone company. Now, I do have some pictures. I think it's good to bring these up because I think we need to see an updated picture of Chester.
Yeah.
I think that would be really, really good.
So while you're looking those up, it does seem very important to Chester, like when his children are getting married, is to send a crest along with them.
Yes.
Like to let the spouse know, like, this is our family,
Mm-hmm.
and you're now part of it. So guess what?
Yeah.
Like, you are mine, and you are part of our history now. This is our history, and it's just very important for him to press that upon his children.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's incredibly important for Chester. The family legacy is really meaningful to him. I think he'd really very much like this podcast because it's telling his story. He's very much into the family histories. So first of all, let's bring up a picture of the house. Now, the house is no longer there in Lacona, but I have been able to confirm with the people of Lacona that this was absolutely their house. And the property was owned by the next door neighbors after the Demarees were gone. So this is the only photo that I know of that is a photo of the Demaree home in Lacona, Iowa. And it's a very modest home. And Chester's mentioning an office right now. Now he's going to an office to work. Chester's eventually going to continue his practice at home. And so what the people in town have indicated to me is that when you walk in the door in the front here, and we'll describe for the audio listeners, it's a 2-story home. It looks like it has maybe, I guess, I'm assuming it's like 4 rooms on each level.
Mm-hmm.
And it just has a little awning, not really a patio. And the sidewalk's it's right up on the sidewalk too.
Yeah, it's right there.
Yep. And then on the second floor, we would assume these are the bedrooms. So pretty quaint.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty humble as far as a home goes. The people in Lacona indicated to me, because some of them were kids, and he was the town doctor. He was also the school doctor. He was the one that would take care of them as kids, give them their vaccinations and things like that. When you went to Dr. Demaree and you were getting taken care of, you would walk in the door and directly to your right was his office. So we can imagine when we're looking at this photo, if you look at it on the bottom right corner, that's where Chester is going to practice the majority of the time that he's in Lacona. He doesn't stay in the office of town long. Directly behind his office in the back of the building was his dark room, was his photographic studio.
Oh.
So the whole right side of the home was the office for his full-time work, and then the office for his hobby, basically. And that whole side, it would seem, was like that. Now, there was not a bathroom here, from what I understand. There was the outhouse.
Oh my!
You had in the back, yeah. So there was an outhouse for that. There's no garage at this time. There is a story about the building of a garage. Does not exist. So this house is gone. But I was so happy when I was going through the photos and just came across this image, and I'm like, that has to be it. This has to be the one. And I wish it was slightly better quality, but I'd rather an image than none at all. So, and to have the people of Lacona who remembered the house and were able to confirm 100% this was the Demaree home, that we have that picture. We can envision Chester sitting here, I guess somewhere on the left side of the house, because the office is going to be on the other side eventually. That's where he's doing all his pondering. That's where they're having their Pepsi Cola and things like that. The kitchen on the left. Yeah, so that's a wonderful photo. Then I'm going to stop sharing here, and I'll bring up the other photo just so we can get an updated picture of Chester and Laura here. And I think it's appropriate because we're ending this episode with a letter from Chester and starting the next one with another letter from Chester, so we can get that visual again. And this is one of the other reasons I could tell that it was a picture of the house. It was part of the same series, so we can see the paneling behind. But here's the town doctor, and there's Laura, and I think it's a wonderful picture of the two of them together. He really does look like the doctor here. Like he's just come out of some work. He's got his sleeves up. She has that slight smile expression. For the people listening to the audio, he does not have a smile on his face. No. He looks like he's thinking about the 13th sermon that he's going to be outlining for the preacher
he's
here.
Over there looking. He's like, is that a crested titmouse over there?
Is that a titmouse?
Perhaps
he's distracted.
Call to it.
Yeah. It's a bit of a faraway look. He's sort of beyond on an academic level a lot. And I think we kind of get that in the expression on his face. It's a very thoughtful expression.
He definitely probably had many different things on his mind at any given time of like what he was going to be doing, and but this is lovely. It's lovely to have pictures of the people like at that time.
Yeah, and these photos are dated, so we know this is mid-40s. Wow. So we don't have to guess it. Absolutely. On the back of the picture, it actually gives the date, so we know this is the mid-40s, and we can get that nice image of Chester. And yeah, so that's pretty much it for today's episode. A little bit shorter of today, but we wanted to be able to look into some of these matters. We're a little slow to get through April, which is nice. We're actually lingering in a month for a bit here because there's a lot going on. Sweetie had that big trip to Philadelphia area, but there's a lot going on in Ottumwa. And then we're going to be very soon heading into May of 1944. And we also have to remember in the background, there's a lot going on in World War II that, again, not being mentioned. But I mentioned when we started 1944 a number of episodes ago, June 6th is coming up, within less than 2 months at this point. We know D-Day is going to happen. So we're starting to move towards pretty much that peak moment of the European theater. Now, this letter to Frank was care of the postmaster in San Francisco. So we have to guess that Frank's in the Pacific theater because it's the postmaster in San Francisco. But we have a question mark about where Bob is. Is Bob in the Pacific theater as well? or is he in the European theater? And we will leave that question open until next week when Chester writes to Bob. And with that, I think that's the end of the episode today. Thank you, everybody, for participation with the Love Sweetie podcast. Please like, share, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening, please leave a review, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Please check out the website for updates. I'm going to get onto the website these pictures of the house from Lacona and the pictures of Dr. Demaree and Laura, so we get to see that some more. And that's it.
We'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.